You lead us off since I don't know what to say for the intro.
Yeah, of course. What happened to that glorious music?
Well,
You
I
turn,
turned it off. Do you
honey,
want a
you're
little
supposed to
sample?
play it as the intro, but that's okay. We're still learning after several years of social media stuff. So hi everybody that's tuning in. We're excited to be here, and this is going to be just a super casual conversation. Hopefully, a celebration of Second Chance Month, just to highlight our stories and the work that we do. So my name is Jennifer Toon. I am a member of the steering committee for the statewide leadership council, and I am one of the co-founders of Lioness Justice Impacted Women's Alliance. So would someone like to kind of get an introduction? We are waiting for Maggie. And those of us that know and love Maggie, she will make her grand entrance, much like she does during hearings. So she's always one for good entrances. So who would like to lead us off and just talk a little bit about what SLC is?
Well, I'll talk about Statewide Leadership Council.
Yeah.
So I just recently got to join Statewide Leadership Council. It's been maybe 6 months, honestly. Wait, here's Maggie. And this is right on
I knew
time.
it right when you started.
Yes. Who better to talk about Statewide Leadership Council than our fearless leader? So, Maggie, you have to jump right in because that's what we're doing right now. Can you give us just a rundown of what that organization is and who we're made of and who we want to join us?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about the chaotic entrance. um, okay, I'm Maggie, and we are the Statewide Leadership Council. What we are is a group of people all across Texas who are formerly incarcerated, and we use our experiences to impact change at the state level. And so we work on legislative priorities, and right now we have 3 that are moving through the legislative system. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Maggie. And all of us are a part of SLC. So let's talk a little bit about Lioness. Lioness Justice Impacted Women's Alliance. It is actually a fiscally sponsored program from Build Up Inc. We are current and formerly incarcerated women. You know, we really looked at the success of SLC and a group of us on this call. We're working to help save Melissa Lucio's life, a friend and a pretty much a sister in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And as we were working to help, stop her execution this time last year, we realized that, as women, we really needed our own space to really work on the things that are very gender specific. So that's kind of how Lioness began. And we chose that word, that name, because what better symbol to show sisterhood than a female lion? They hunt together, they support one another, they take care of the cubs, and many times they live their whole lives together. So definitely a symbol of community. So as we begin this, and it's about an hour and a half, and I hope everybody stays with us because, I looked forward to this because these are my favorite people right here. This is a sense of community that we've built together with both of our organizations and within our friendships. So that being said, we would like to hear from each one of you a little bit about your journey and how important, second chances are and what that really looks like. So we're going to hand this off to Lori.
Boy, I love being the first one to talk, right? So thank you, Jennifer, for putting me first on the agenda. And I know I want to keep this as brief as possible. I think it's always important to know where somebody's coming from so that you know what got them to where they are. And I have to keep it brief because my criminal justice involvement, this start of this life really started when I was in my early 20s, right? So it goes back a long way. And it was the result of a lot of substance use disorder, a lot of chaotic living, and a lot of those things creating this perfect storm that led to a lot of times in county jail. And then finally, I remember when, and I'm going to try to keep my lingo out of this because hopefully there's people watching who might not understand if I throw in legal terminology or prison lingo. But when I signed the papers that I was guilty of my first felony charge, I remember them taking a DNA sample from me and saying, "You're giving up your right to vote." And y'all, that totally, absolutely devastated me, almost more than any other collateral consequence, because politics and advocacy has always been something that I learned in my family and was really kind of a productive voting member of society. So when that was taken away, I really felt like my world had collapsed. Things went on. I ended up going to prison in 2013. I spent 2 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And while I was there, I took a class called Truth Be Told that I'm sure that people who are watching have heard of that class. And so what it taught me in that class was a manner of storytelling, owning your own story, and learning how to advocate for yourself. So fast forward, I got out of prison. I took those tools that I learned, some of it which was community, and I went forth. And I always say they give you $100 and tell you to go and sin no more. So I took what I learned there, started working with women also who'd gotten out of prison, and really found kind of my niche in reentry. And spent about 7 years working in women's reentry. I tell people I've probably worked with upwards of 1,000 women in the state of Texas, somehow as part of their reentry journey. And while I don't do that anymore, I still use that storytelling and advocacy and that heart for change to try and work within Lioness and statewide leadership to affect change on the state level. So what do I do now? I spend a lot of time in my off time volunteering, following bills, learning how to tell my story in an effective way that hopefully advocates to the legislators that things aren't right. And we have the solution to fix them. I think that there's no better time than Second Chance Month to highlight what we're trying to do. And I don't think this is a me thing whatsoever. I think this is an us thing. So that's all I have. And hopefully that made sense.
That was perfect. I couldn't have said it better. Let's see, who do we have next? I believe it's Marcy.
Here I am. My name's Marcy, and I was incarcerated for a little over a decade here in Texas. I met some of the most amazing people during my time in prison, some of the most kind-hearted, talented, special women. And when I left them, there was a loss. I felt a loss in not getting to be with them. And so I came home, and of course I've got a big family out here. So we're working on healing our trauma and working on our bond and regaining trust and the things that someone coming out of the carceral system has to do within their community. And during that time, my heart would ache for those ladies that I left behind. And what kind of drove me into the advocacy side of things was last summer, it was a little bit uncomfortable in my bedroom, and I kicked my covers off, and it was hot. I was hot, and I was complaining about being hot. My second summer out of the penitentiary in Texas in a non-air conditioned unit, I found myself comfortable enough that I was complaining about being a little uncomfortable. And it hit me in such a way that tears came to my eyes, and I just thought, how have I gotten to this place so fast where I have forgotten what it felt like in there? And that was a massive change. That was like the moment for me where I realized I have to do something to be the voice for those women, my loved ones that I left in the penitentiary. And both of these organizations, Texas Statewide Leadership Council and Lioness, have been, that's the space for that, guys. That's where I've been able to find the same kind of connections that you make with people while you're going through the trauma of being incarcerated in the state of Texas. Guess what? Those people have a group out here. They have a couple of groups out here, and we get to be a part of that now. So not only are we a voice for the people incarcerated, and we're fighting to help them and that bringing them hope, but we're still a part of them because we have members that are inside. And I don't remember what I was supposed to be talking about exactly. I feel like I got carried away. But yeah, that's what's going on with me.
It's I love when we all get carried away. The stuff that we end up talking about is really great. No, you did great. Justin, let's hear from you.
Yeah, speaking of getting carried away, I'm probably going to get carried away too. But hey, everyone, it's amazing to be part of this and to be a part of this group that you see. I think when we're talking about second chances, these folks I consider my second chance because I find so much hope and belonging and community. And I think that often lacks with folks who have a record and have to deal with having a record of some kind. But as I was kind of thinking about like what I would love to highlight, I think, when thinking about second chance and second chance month, like for me, like I really try and go back to the idea of we all, right, all of us are more than the worst choice we've made, the worst mistakes we've made, and we all deserve that second chance. And also too, like why just second chances? Like I think we should all just have the opportunity to grow, and we all have that journey, and there's gonna be it's not just a straightforward path, right? But I think for me, like that's really what I hone in on when it comes to this time, and that really informs like how I go about my advocacy, right? Like when we are advocating for folks, how are we trying to be inclusive of everyone and not leaving folks behind, right? When we're working on, say, legislation, right, our policies, or even in our narratives, right, of how we talk. Incarceration has not been my experience. I'm on probation. That's my experience. I did have to spend some time in county jail as part of my conditions on being on probation. But I'm just, to be open with y'all, like I'm not on probation for something that's very easy for folks to understand or to sort of be okay with. I mean, I caused a lot of harm back when I was much younger. And I remember when I was trying to think of what am I going to do with my life once I became system involved. Obviously, criminal justice stuff, that was my first experience. Never had an arrest record, never been involved. Not even really my family, at least the family I knew. So when I got involved and went through that process, that was the first time I've ever come across it. And boy, were my eyes just like, whoa, like wow. And so I was like, well, I want to do something with this. Like, what can I do with this? And I remember being scared because when I would look at advocacy or things that I were seeing that people were talking about as far as like maybe bills or changes that they were trying to work on, I was not included in those conversations. I very much felt like people who were convicted of or who had been on probation for quote unquote violent offenses were very much not part of the conversation, right? Like talk about being the fringe on the fringe of society, So I was pretty like, well, okay, well, maybe this is not, maybe I just need to keep my warehouse job, because that's what I was doing. I was in a warehouse doing my own thing. Like that's it. But like, as I started talking with folks, these folks here, and seeing that there is a community out there that's willing to take in folks, but also too, it's like, no, I deserve to fight for my humanity and for everyone's humanity. And like, that leads me to when I'm advocating, and I don't know if we have folks who are staffers on here, but like people who are in charge of these bills and things like that, like we really need to be conscious of like, when we're thinking of these things, who are we leaving behind? Why are we leaving them behind? Are we thinking about coming back and getting them? Like, how are we including everyone in our narrative, right? Everyone, because it really is second chances for all, and not second chances for just some, you know? I don't know if I got carried away on that, but yeah, I mean, that's just a little bit about like where I'm coming from in this work and what I'm doing.
That was wonderful, Justin. And you can, out of all of us, you certainly can always feel free to get carried away. We are always really blessed by your insight, seriously. So thank you. And let's hear from Maggie Luna.
Yay. Okay. God, I just love this whole group of people. I mean, we have been through some things that would have taken some people out. And here we are fighting for people who are still incarcerated and those who are suffering the same things that we have been through. I think Second Chance Month is so important to me because, like I heard earlier, it's not second chances. I've had about 9 million chances, and this one stuck. I've been in and out of jails, rehabs, prisons since 1996, and 2016 was my last conviction. And so when I returned home in 2019, I wanted to do something different. And so this time I got out and wanted to do something different. And I couldn't find anything. I didn't want to go back to the streets because I knew where that landed. But through all of the process and the reentry that I was going through, I had people helping me. I had people helping me with my resume. I had people helping me with food and rent. And I'm so grateful for those people because not everybody has that. I went to the women's home in Houston. And so I had an 18-month cushion to get on my feet. And I believed that if I did all of this, that I would get a good job and I could, move on about my life. Throughout this whole time, I was filling out applications, beefing up my resume, learning how to use my past on my resume as strengths. And I remember I was on Indeed and I had 144 rejections from the resumes that I had sent. I was getting job interviews, but I was going to like the third interview and then getting denied because of my felony. And now you have people that say we hire felons, but not that kind. It depends on what your felony is. If it's socially acceptable, then we'll hire you. And so I was getting denied after people were saying, "Oh, they hired me. I have 3 felonies," and mine was just not acceptable to them. And so finally the only job that I could find was at a hotel working in the spa folding towels for $10 an hour. And so I knew, I had left prison with absolutely nothing. And I was leaving rehab with all of these tools, but still nothing. And so what made me so passionate about this is just knowing what I had been through and all of the people that I had been incarcerated with, and knowing that they're going to come out and they're going to have these same struggles. And what if they don't have that cushion like I have? What if they don't have that family support like I had? You know, it's impossible to re-enter into a society that no longer thinks of you as human because of your background. And so I was very blessed to meet people who were already in the advocacy world, and they were already coming to the Capitol advocating, using their life experiences to help others. And this showed me that I can use what I've been through as a strength. What I went through was not for nothing. And so I didn't have a car, I didn't have anything, but I had a desire, and I wanted to help. I wanted my voice to be heard. And so I came to the Capitol for in the first session in 2019, and I heard people speaking in front of the corrections committee saying, "Everything's fine here, boss. Nothing to see. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Everything's going good. TDCJ is doing everything they're supposed to be." And blah. And I was livid because I had just left less than a year prior to that. No, a year actually. And I knew what was being said was not true. And so that just drove me 10 times harder, because that's what's been going on. They have people telling them there's nothing going on. They need us up there saying, this is what I've been through. Yes, the policy is one thing, but that's not what's being portrayed in the actual units. And so this is so important to me, to have people inside that have hope that when you get out, we can make a difference. You know, I remember laying in my bunk when I was sweating and melting, and there was an elderly lady sitting across from me, and her face was all wrinkled, and she just looked at me and was like, "Luna, am I going to make it out of here?" And she had a drug charge, and I don't know, she could have died from heat stroke or anything at any point of time, you know. And it doesn't matter what her charge is, she's still human. So we need to humanize felons. We need to be at the Capitol fighting for rehabilitation. I always, 95% of us come home. The chance, the percentage of people who have death sentences and life without parole is so small. So everybody will have a chance to come home. How do you want them to come? How do you want them to be your neighbor? How do you want them to be marrying your children or going to school with your children? You know, do you want these people to re-enter society bitter and hateful? Or do you want them to have the tools to be successful for real community safety? Because I'm telling you, I was the most dangerous when I did not have my needs met. I was not I was a danger to society because nobody would give me a chance, and I was feeling hopeless. And that's when I was ready to just say, whatever, you know, I've tried, but thank God I had support in my life to keep me going. So, yeah, I really just love being in this realm and being able to use this and make changes and just bring truth, you know. All we have to do is tell our truths, and hopefully something will change. So thank you.
Maggie was she was preaching. She was gonna she's amazing. And you know, I love all of you, and that was a common thread, right, in everything that we've all said, right? Well, two common threads: the importance of narrative and community. So I'm, you know, my name is Jennifer, and I've been system impacted for, gosh, 27, 30 years now. I started my journey when I was 15. I didn't have the mental health supports in my schools or in my family. Rural East Texas, and that's in my questions later for us to talk about, you know, our communities that we were in. But it was in crisis, in a moment of crisis, that something tragic happened, and I entered the system as a child back when it was the Texas Youth Commission. Horrific horrific stuff that happened there that still haunts me and drives my work, right? But this led to about 20 years of incarceration. And this most recent time that I got out was December 13th, 2018. Lori is making a face because I do remind everyone that was Taylor Swift's birthday. And y'all, I was so scared getting out of Henley. I just went through the substance use parole answer program, right? And, couldn't really process a lot of it because I'm where am I going to live? My parents can let me stay there for a while, job, food, clothing. I have no money. So I'm not able to process all that programming on the back end. But when I was so nervous at the gate, my monitor wasn't working correctly. I was on super intensive supervision. And they were like, well, we can't release you until this is fixed. So I'm sitting there in tears at the back gate at Henley. And then I realized what the day was. And to me, that was a sign from God to say, hey, shake it off. It's going to be all right. It's going to calm down. Okay. Because everybody on this call knows that I can get very anxious and full of bad energy. So they pick me up and they take me to the halfway house. And, I was on that monitor, that ankle monitor, for a minimum of a year, and it was a nightmare. And I finally was able to find employment at, I'll just say their names, Goodwill and Subway. Fast food was the only place that would hire. And Goodwill, like Maggie mentioned about second chances, it depends, right? Oh, not all felonies are equal. When everybody touts being second chance employers, let's be careful. What are they really talking about? And I was just fortunate enough that both of the managers at Subway and Goodwill were system impacted with lower level felonies. They were in management, and they kind of snuck me through their relationships with their HR folks. But eventually, as I tried to move up in my employment in Goodwill, the HR reevaluated and saw my charges. And, I was told I should be grateful to have a job and not to expect to move up. And, that college education that I got while I was incarcerated, they didn't care. They didn't care that I showed up every single day, rain, sleet, or shine. And I said, so I'm good enough to take out the trash here. And I remember feeling so defeated. And, I was trying to establish, I told Diane, I saw her in the comments, BF Diane, her and 2 or 3 other ladies were my community once I got home, formerly incarcerated women, right? And I would tell her, if we could just lift up that community that we had in there that got us through all those years and have it out here, I'm like Marcy said, I immediately felt the loss of those women on the inside. And they are what saved my life for 20 years. They raised me. They were there for me, and I had to leave them there. And so my only way to succeed out here was to reestablish that somehow. And it was tough. And it was Diane and a few other people that saw me through that really hard time. I was close, so close from driving up to the parole office and saying, take me back. I don't want to be here. The stigma, the lack of community support, all the things that we're going to discuss more. But I remember sitting at Goodwill, and I was telling Alexa, who is also SLC and Lioness member, I said, I was telling her what was going on and what I was feeling. And she said, Jennifer, you sound more miserable than you did in prison. Like, you sound like I knew you in prison, and you sound more. This is the most miserable I've ever heard you. And it did something to my spirit that I immediately called my manager and said, I'm done. And I left. No job, just left. And because I had this faith in this belief, like Maggie's story really exemplifies that too. Of y'all know she just showed up at this Capitol and had to find a ride home to Houston because I'm going to be there doing what is placed in my heart and my passion to help the people that I left behind so that they don't have to go through this. And it was really bugging people online, right? Like in social media, people at TCJE. I saw Maggie and I saw the women working on the dignity bills. I believe it was the 86th legislative session. Lori, yeah, I stalked you before now, right? I did. And I just kept showing up, And we were able to create the community that we have, y'all. And y'all saved my life every single day. And y'all know that I'm serious when I say that. So, that common thread of all of our story is community. So Marcy, let's do that then. I see the message you sent me. Why don't we answer questions from the chat, and then I'll ask a question because I've got some prepared questions for us. So if you want to guide the conversation with the chat comments.
Probably I need to be unmuted to do that.
That would work.
So Jennifer, this probably is a question for you. Rhonda is asking, how do women who are still incarcerated get involved with Lioness Justice Impacted Women's Alliance? And we'll follow up with Maggie can lead us how people who are incarcerated can get involved with Texas SLC.
Yeah, so great question, Rhonda. Thank you. So I know Marcy mentioned what was very unique about both of our groups is that we're not just a group of formerly, we're a group of currently, right? And the women on the inside really guide and inform our work. So they can write us at our P.O. Box. It is P.O. Box 12051, Austin, Texas 78711. And I'm sure our social media guru will put all the information on the screen and in the chat. They can write us, or loved ones can give us their information, and we'll send them a newsletter. We cherish them. So yeah, we would love to have them a part of Lioness. And Maggie, your process for SLC?
Yes, thank you. SLC, we communicate with men also. So Lioness is women, formerly incarcerated women. And I want Jennifer to kind of talk about why we created that space. But in SLC, we do communicate with men and women. And so to write a letter, they would write to 1714 Fort View Road, 1714 Fort View Road. I forgot the suite number. Austin, Texas. Justin, do you have it?
That's okay, guys, because I'm looking it up online and I'll put it right at the bottom for everyone.
Yes,
so right now I'm going to give them a chance in just a moment.
Okay, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that I'll look those up while we're talking, Maggie, while you're explaining a little bit, and I'll put it at the bottom of the screen just like I did Lioness right now.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so, and usually what we get letters the most for is for parole packets. We have a resource for parole packets that is absolutely free. We will send it into your loved ones. You don't have to pay any fees. You don't have to, get an attorney. But that's one of our most requested items. And then we also just have some correspondents that just like to tell us what's happening on the inside. And that's so important because when we do go to the Capitol and tell what's happening on the inside, this isn't from 2017 when I got out. This isn't from 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We are talking to people who are currently inside. And so, yeah, it's important for us to stay connected.
Cool. Thank you, Maggie. And now I'll ask a question, and I'll direct this to Lori. Lori, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to successful reentry? Let me break it down like this. Personally and like society. So a personal, with all your experience working with women in your own, a personal obstacle in something that society does to really create obstacles.
Jennifer, Maggie, do you guys remember the day that I sent you the text a couple years ago where I asked you what's the biggest pitfall for women in reentry? And I just wanted to preface that by saying I didn't just ask y'all. I asked about 20 women who I knew. And when I tell you, bam, bam, immediate answer, everyone I knew what the answer was: relationships. That's going to be the biggest stumbling block, right? That's what I've seen from when you're walking out. And I think I heard somebody say this best, who does kind of the same thing that I've done for, and he used to work, or he works for a men's program that mirrors what I used to do. He said, if I could teach people how to love themselves, then there would be so many fewer barriers to reentry. But Jennifer, to answer a question like that, I mean, my head started spinning, because are you talking about like nuts and bolts? Are you talking about, your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your food, your shelter, all of those necessary things? Are you talking about the path there and your mental health needs and, your employment needs and the way that women will go into service industry jobs? Which, by the way, I left prison and made a job, and my first job was washing dishes for $8.50 an hour, and I was grateful for it, right? So there's so many ways that I could answer that question, and just my head explodes when I even begin to try to. But I'll say on that other side, society, stigma, 100%. I believe that it's stigma. And I believe that that's lessening, right? We all know, we've all heard that 1 in 3 people in the United States has been touched personally by the criminal justice system, by the criminal legal system, because it's not a just system. So the way that we're reducing that stigma is still, I think that it's lessening. However, when you talk about the people in power, they're not touched by it in any way, shape, or form. So that there's a barrier there as that stigma begins to break down.
Thank you. Justin, can you tell us because Lori mentioned that $8 washing dishes, right? My Subway was at the time $7.50. When we highlight second chances and people who are employers, they celebrate being second chance providers. What we often tell the legislators is a phrase called sustainable living wages. So what is the difference between just having a job, right? Like me just taking out the trash every day, and sustainable living wages?
Yeah, I mean, it's, we live in a very capitalist centered, very exploitative society that looks at people as being production means as opposed to being humans. And I think when we talk about work and employment, it's always such a weird thing, because like I hear people who talk about like folks who I know who are currently on probation and had the ankle monitor and are going through all of these types of stuff, and they have these jobs that are just like, and they are so grateful for, but at the same time it's like, my God, y'all deserve so much better, because oftentimes they're surviving because they're having to live with family or loved ones. Some live in motels and hotels, right? And when we think about not just being able to sustain themselves, right, but being able to live a thriving life where they don't have to worry about the basic needs part, like Lori was talking about, like housing and food and all of that, but they can also have money in which they can enjoy their life, especially when you're talking about folks even who are out on parole with all of the fees and all of the various things that they make you pay for and all of that stuff. It's, we got to get away from this idea of like, job just to have a job, our money just to have money, but like really standing in like we deserve to have a job that pays us enough to where we don't have to worry about these things, and that we can also enjoy our life, because that's a full circle for everyone, right? I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're just wanting to hand out, handouts, right? Social welfare system. It's like, no, like if you're about safety for all, if you're about healing for all, if you're about accountability for all, then that has to encompass ways in which we can actually give folks the opportunities to work where they're paid well, but also their dignity is acknowledged, right? Their humanity is acknowledged. Like, and those are things that it's a win-win. It's seriously a win-win for everyone, for the person, for the system, for the community, for their family, because I think we also tend to forget, like, it's, like, I'm on probation, right? But it's not just me. I mean, my whole family, because of the surveillance of how it all works, is also on probation, right? Incarceration is just not about the person who's in a cage. It's about all of their loved ones and family members who have to go through all of that trauma and all of that too. So I think, especially when we talk about, jobs and housing and these crumbs, that we're given, it's like that thing of like, yes, obviously we need something, but I deserve, you deserve, we all deserve more than just that. And I think we need to be okay with acknowledging that, right?
Yeah, and that's a great way to say that, the crumbs, right? Like, and I think all of us know in advocacy, sometimes it feels like we're supposed to just be grateful for scraps and crumbs, because of the things that we've done in our past, that we've done our time for, and that we've grown through. But somehow, I remember when I was locked up, somebody, I won't mention her name, but she was asked something while she was down at Braille. They had some visitors about, and they were like, what are you looking forward to as a job? And, everybody was saying those very, the things that feel humble and modest, because, I'm just so grateful to be able to get home and have this. And she said, oh, I can't wait to be an executive. And later, her boss chewed her out and said, how dare you say that? So cocky and arrogant to those visitors. And she said, ma'am, I have a bachelor's degree and I deserve it. And I deserve it because of the work I do here. I know I'm capable of it. So why wouldn't I aim higher than what the other lady said? And, I never forgot that, because we are kind of taught, and it's instilled in us that how dare you? How dare you complain? At least you have a job. But it's not sustainable. Marcy, I heard, already it's said about stigma, right? Lori brought that up and Justin brought that up, right? What are the most common myths and stigma about people who have been in the criminal legal system, that you have experienced? And what ways have you fought to overcome that?
So for sure, with my experiences and sharing my story, and sometimes other people's stories as well on social media, I'm always surprised in the comments section regarding what people think you have had to have done to get to prison, and their people's mindsets of prison. So I think the biggest misunderstanding is even the people that I was incarcerated with that had a big crime or even a particularly heinous crime, they didn't wake up that morning and say, I'm going to do this and I can't wait. And they weren't in prison saying, I'm so glad I did that. They deserved that. No, they were caught up in a circumstance where emotions and a whole plethora of other things swarmed them, and they ended up in that place, and they weren't okay with it in themselves. They were living in guilt and remorse and trying to recover from that themselves. And so I think that people have this idea that, especially I was housed on the maximum security unit, that the ladies I was housed with were monsters, or, and that's just not the fact. The fact of the matter is I was housed with all of these women that were broken long before they entered into the system. And they needed help long before their crime was committed. And if we had been in a place where our country was more of a restorative justice kind of situation, and all of these tax dollars and funding that are going into the prison industrial complex were going into our communities to restore these broken people before the crimes were ever committed, our communities would end up just much safer.
Jen, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Also, snaps for Marcy using the prison industrial complex. I love that. My particular system, my particular involvement in the system, sort of as part of my probations, right? I have to go to individual therapy, group therapy, and I'm often with men primarily. Actually, it's only been men, to be honest, at least in my groups, where I think if you were to see like what we've done, really, including myself, on paper, you would probably just would not want to even entertain or interact, right? And you see that on the news a lot when they post about stuff, and then your thought is like, man, that person's the evil and needs to get out of society and all that stuff. And the one thing I've learned that I think is hard for people to sort of sit with is that we can hold people accountable, right, and acknowledge the harm, because the harm's real and that needs to be acknowledged and that needs to be dealt with, while also realizing or holding the humanity and their dignity, right? Because people are, maybe I'm just coming from my personal point of view, but to me, I don't care. I believe that everyone has the ability, right, to be better, to be a better version of themselves. Everyone, right? And oftentimes what the system does is, because it's so focused on punishment, right, that it isolates, and just it's just punitive in nature, and it doesn't really try to address true accountability for people's actions. It just wants you to disappear, right? It just wants you to go away. And so I don't know, it's just the conversation, Marcy, like what you're bringing up. It's just, a lot of those people I sit with have had so much stuff that has gone on in their own lives, right? And that's certainly not an excuse for anyone's behavior, right? But I just feel like we have to get to a place where like, how can we as like a society figure out how we can do both those things at the same time? Because right now it kind of feels like it's an either or, and I realize like these are very complicated situations, and obviously not here advocating that people shouldn't feel what they feel, right? I mean, that's far from it. But I think when we're trying to think about like what is best for not just handling the individual, but handling the fact that violence doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? Violence happens out of many things that we need to also address, and it can't just be about the person, right? I think those are also things that weigh heavy on me too, as we talk about these things and as we do our work, is like, how do we talk about narrative, right? How do we introduce that into all of this too?
Yeah, you make some really great points, Justin. And I'm kind of thinking about, as we're talking about Second Chance Month, and the people in our lives that value us because they see past our mistakes. I also want to ask Maggie kind of the similar question of how have you been able to successfully challenge people's, misconception of people who have been incarcerated?
Well, I mean, me, Jennifer, I just run up on people.
You do that. You show them those knuckles.
Yes. And I mean, but I've learned that that's the way that we're going to break through this stigma, is just putting our humanity in their face, because they are not going to come try to understand who we are. They're never going to come knock on our doors. So if we want to work together and be part of society, we need to just kick in doors, you know, and say, here we are. This is my house. I pay for this. And you are supposed to listen to me. And I'm telling you, like at the Capitol, I've had several side eye, dirty looks when I walk into their offices covered in tattoos. You know, I tell them I'm here for justice and equity, and I've been to prison this many times, and they're like, I don't even know why you're here, you know? But the more that I wear them down, then it becomes a relationship, you know? Because I've humanized people who look like me, who have passed like me. Um, like Justin had said, I look on paper, I wouldn't even hang out with me today, you know, if I just ran my background, and I wouldn't let me move in anywhere. But I'm not that person anymore. I've made a lot of mistakes because of my addiction and because of desperation and poverty and trauma, you know. And like Marcy said, I didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, let me just go, you know, cause all of this harm to society because it sounds like it would be fun, you know. But here's the thing, is I did cause all this harm, and I did pay my debt to society. I did my time. And I hate it when people say, if you can't do the time, don't. I can do more time than anybody who says that, you know. I don't mind doing, if I did the crime, I don't mind doing the time. But I did it, and I'm still paying for it. I'm still paying for it every time I have to go talk to somebody. I still have to remind them, yes, oh, by the way, I'm a felon. Every time I want, well, my 144 job applications that got denied, I had to tell all of them who I was, even though I had done my time. And housing, I mean, if you want anything decent, you know, it's just not, your past is always going to hold on to you. And that's why the legislation that we work on, House Bill 2300, is an opportunity for people who have served their time, changed their lives, and just petition for non-disclosure. It's not even like a guarantee. It would give me an opportunity to ask a judge for a non-disclosure of my record, so I can't have the same opportunities that I should have because I've done my time, you know. So yeah, breaking down doors and knocking down stigma and forcing people. And I want to reiterate, they are not going to come to us and say, how can I understand you? We have to continue to bring our people out and put them in their face and be like, this is who you think doesn't deserve a second chance, you know. And there's so many formerly incarcerated people doing so many amazing things out there that did terrible, heinous things and are doing wonderful, amazing things. So if we want to, and this will continue to work through society, because people will see, hey, that person's been through stuff, but they're doing better now. I can get out, you know, instead of just continuing the cycle like, hey, let's just keep hurting people. So if we really want community safety, second chances are the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah, and well, let's talk a little bit about, you know, as we're all looking at our own success, our second chance. Well, for me, it was the third, and like Maggie said, several times, right? We finally got it. You know, Lori, you had mentioned earlier the importance of truth, and you participated in Truth Be Told, which is a wonderful organization of learning how to own your story and tell your truth. we have to do our part, right? Like, so society has to do their part, and we continue to do our part. And, you know, they still are having a hard time recognizing that. But I really want to talk about what is accountability, right? Because that also plays a huge role in all of our success, is that we had to be honest. We had to tell our truths to ourselves and the people we harmed. And I know, I just told a group of students last night, accountability never happened because of incarceration. It happened despite it, right? Because while we were incarcerated, whether it was county jail for a day, whether it was 20 years in prison, all that is about is survival, period. Can't process programming most of the time, can't do, you know, it's all about physical survival, that base need, right? So what does accountability look like for those of us that have been successful, for yourself, and how important is truth in that? I bet later you're going to be like, why didn't you prep me for questions instead of just doing this? Honey, I'm just going with the conversation, and I felt like this was your jam right here, this question.
It started with me. And so I'm glad that you said, Jennifer, that prison doesn't get you there, right? Because it did not get me there. But I was in a place where I was separated from society long enough where I had the ability to look at some of my decision making process. So, but then, you know, and I will talk a little bit about truth be told a little bit more, because, you know, I'm a writer. I went to prison as a writer. I was a journalist. I was a newspaper editor, been a lifelong writer. So I knew how to write a story, but I didn't know how to get to the core of how my decisions continued to lead me back to the same destination, right? And so I can speak for myself when I say, having had some trauma-informed programming and guidance that was not provided by the system. And I want y'all to hear that. I want the people who are listening to hear that was not provided by the system. I took some time to really get to the core of the decisions that I made and how they impacted my life. And so that's how I began to take accountability. I know I'm walking in with some other things, substance use disorder, it's a given, right? But I had to take accountability for the decisions that led me to the place where I was and how I planned to move forward in my future. When I tell you it has not been that yellow brick road, it has not been a straight and narrow path, because this is still a little bit new to me. And so when I take accountability, I tend, in the way that I teach others, when I was in a space to teach others to take accountability, is to own it and move on. I ended up here because of whatever it is and the way you want to tell it. I made it here, and this is how I'm moving forward. This is how I made it here. I take responsibility, and this is how I'm moving forward. And I try to do that these days with a lot of areas of my life, you know, and so that's, I'm not sure. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. You really did. And I think that would be as I think that's a lot of what most of us would say, right? In terms of accountability, it's that self-reflection, owning it, and now let's move on, right? I own it, I take care of it, and move on. And we would hope that society will allow us to do that, and they themselves can also own their part. And now let's move on. Let's move forward into doing something, all of us successful together.
And so part of my accountability is I try not to get too bogged down in the bullshit that was maybe not within my control. And so I take accountability for my part in things, where I got and how I moved on.
So, Marcy, do you have a question for us as well that you want to?
I do. I had thrown this up there. This was for Lori, and Laura is a facilitator with Truth Be Told, which Lori has talked about just a little bit during our webinar right now. And so she's asking, where can she direct women coming out of the system that are home now and can't find a job? What are there some resources that you're aware of, Lori, to help her?
Absolutely. But I think that the first and most important questions are, where are they? And where are they trying to be? And so I look amongst y'all and I know what your first jobs were. I can probably give some very specific answers to those questions. But as a whole, I would tell people to get involved in their community, in their local community. So it's going to depend on where they are. Resources and magic resources, the resource lists are wrong and they change. Okay. And I got to tell you, like from personal experience, I used to look at what uniforms people were wearing at the parole office. I used to look and see how they were dressed at probation. I would listen to where they were working and I would start making leaps from there. And then I started to go to meetings, whether that was church or AA meetings or NA meetings or whatever it is that's helping you through. Then I'd listen to them and I'd find out where there's no magic bullet for where you can get a job and where you can't. There's so many determining factors in that. And I would hope that y'all would have some input to kind of bring that back a little bit and maybe help people.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty well said, right? Like at the end of the day, really with anything with employment, a lot usually happens through networking. I'm sorry. I'm obviously fixing to say something inflammatory. No, but like even our jobs now, I networked through the people in our community to be able to find employment. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I want to add that.
Well, my first job, when I got, go ahead, Maggie.
I'm sorry, Marcy.
No, that's okay. I was just going to I'll just briefly say that my first job was Amazon. They are a second chance employer. I applied online. Now they came back at me with some questions because they want details. And so you have to be prepared to, just like Lori was talking about accountability, they want to know why your crime might have happened. So you can feel free to go into some circumstances. And if that was mental health issues, substance abuse disorders, that you can definitely put that there. And then they want to know why that's not a problem anymore. So you want to tell them, well, I took this class and well, I've had the support of this community and well, I've done some soul searching and I'm just simply not that person anymore. And sometimes it's, well, I've outgrown that. I'm 40 years old now and not 20 when my crime was committed. Go ahead, Maggie, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to add that what Jennifer said about networking, I had written this down earlier, like you have to be close to others who have been through what you've been through. Because when I was in spaces where I was around people doing what I was doing, then I was getting the same thing they were getting. And so networking and being around a community of people who are doing things on a level that you want to get to, that I believe, and I'm not saying this is going to get you a job. I'm just saying you're going to need to be supported and sustained because you will get a lot of rejection. And that's just the way I mean, some people don't, and that's great. But in order for me to deal with all of the rejection that I got when I was looking for a job, I had to have that community support. I had to have somebody continuously telling me it's going to happen. But I was also networking with formerly incarcerated people who were advocating in Austin. So, and I wanted to add one thing about accountability too. You know, if you can admit what you did and admit, okay, I did harm to this person and I want to heal from this and I want them to heal. So let's move on together. And maybe that other person's healing is just never speaking to me again, as long as I've acknowledged what I've done and realized that I'm not going to continue this behavior because I don't like the way I feel when I hurt people. And so I feel like accountability is not prison because in prison I didn't have and I was in there with several people who were like, I didn't do this, So if they're not taking accountability, there's no rehabilitation.
The dog agrees. I forget your dog's name. Mittens, Noodles, Fluffy. I'm not real sure, but
Lucy.
Where did I get all that other stuff? You see Taylor back there. She's under the blanket. She's camera shy today. So we've talked about some heavier things, and we still have time. Marcy made me very aware of that. God. So I wanted to switch gears and really just enjoy our space and our community with us that's online. It's maybe talk about some more lighthearted, fun things. What was as your journey on the outside with your freedom, what's something that you really, and it could be silly or deeply impactful, but please don't make us cry. We've moved on to something happier now. What's something that you really enjoy about your second, third, fourth chance? For me, honey, I went to go see Taylor Swift. My God. Okay. Like if I was still in prison, that wouldn't have happened. So I don't know, somebody tell me something fun that you're really, you got that moment where you're like, I'm so grateful for second chances. And don't be shy. They were very polite to each other, but when I cut Maggie off or Marcy, they roast me. So y'all please just jump in.
I can't tell you, Jennifer, something that happens all the time, but I can tell you a couple moments when I felt my freedom, like especially for the first time. First time was when I first got out of prison and I got on the back of a Harley Davidson. And for anyone who hasn't done that, I highly recommend. That's a great way to feel freedom. But I didn't have any of those things. Like Maggie said, I didn't have a car. I didn't have a job. I didn't have resources. I didn't have any clothes, right? And so I went to transitional living because I didn't have family support either. So I can remember I was there. I got out September 10th of 2015. And it was sometime in the spring of 2016. I bought a car. It was one of those beautiful spring days, a little bit like today. I had been so used to being around women 24/7 because in transitional living, you still are. My roommates had left for the weekend, and I was in this car that I'd just gotten for myself, by myself, driving with the windows down. And I was like, wow, I'm free and it feels good. And that's the very first, like, real specific memory I have of that.
Somebody else, y'all quit acting so shy. We on that chat all day long, just capping. So somebody come with it.
When you first asked that question, one thing popped in my mind, and then as Lori was talking, a second thing, and I'll go quick because we only have 21 minutes left. first thing that popped in my mind was when I got home from prison. So I had a truck full that picked me up. I have a huge family. I'm very privileged in the fact that I come from, I mean, it's a lower middle class family, but I come from family members that own their own homes and have jobs and were able to come pick me up with a truck full of people, right? And so my I get there and my son, who has two sons of his own that I had never met yet. That at the time they were 5 and 3. And I was so nervous. I had made my parents stop and so that we could buy them presents because I'm just not sure how they're going to react to me. I don't know how much their parents have talked about me or if they would have any clue. And when I got out of that truck, my little 5-year-old grandson just ran up to me and just, if he had been a football player, I would have fell over because he just, that kind of hug. And he was so excited to see me and meet me. And I just, he had a gift. He had painted a rock for me. And so that happened. And then since then, just pretty recently, my 25-year-old daughter had posted on, I do a lot of social media work. That's my main source of income. And my kids kind of roll their eyes at it a little bit, but my daughter had put something on her social media highlighting one of my posts. And then she just captioned, "So proud of you, mom." And those kind of things, I'm like, wow, I'm out here thankful for this second chance and thankful that people are continuing to forgive me because that's a process. It doesn't just happen. And I'm just feeling that as time goes on.
And that resonates with me so much, Marcy, because some of y'all know, I don't think a lot of y'all know, that my daughter and I were estranged for 6 years. All before my incarceration until her incarceration. And so her incarceration was the beginning of our reunification. So, yeah, that too.
Okay, I want to first apologize for all the chaos going on and segue into this. Can also be what I'm grateful for second chances. Throughout my addiction and my prison stays, I lost custody of all 3 of my children. My rights were terminated, and in Texas, they did not have a pathway for reunification. And so 7 years later, after 2021 session, my son is now home. And we are rocky and unstable, but we are moving through this and learning each other. It's been 7 years. I was in my addiction last time I was a mom, and I've done a lot of work. And so, but he's also been through a lot of trauma. So I've been given a second chance at being a mom, at a life, honestly, because I got to live a life that I got to see a lot of things and I got to make it out. A lot of my friends did not. And so today I get to be grateful for that every single day. That thank God I made it out alive. And it is not flowers and butterflies and rainbows. I mean, every single day I have to fight, just and remind myself of where I came from. But thank God I do have this chance and I'm not in prison or in a grave. And so, yeah, this is amazing. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm next, huh? Yeah, well, I had to really think about this because obviously, like I mentioned, I'm on probation, right? So I was, and I think we can have a whole hour and a half conversation on like incarceration, probation, and why folks get not, and all the privilege that goes into that, right? And so I think most people would think, well, that would be your second chance, and I will tell you, it didn't feel like my second chance, and in a lot of ways, I've still got most of my, well, actually all of my 30s to be under supervision. And so oftentimes I'm thinking about, man, I can't wait till the day where I can do this or do that. But, I'm grateful for my family, because I wouldn't say I was estranged from them, but I was definitely one of those kids who was like, I'm out, peace, like I'm on my own, doing my own thing, bye. And like didn't really keep that connection. And because of that involvement I came into, um, my mom, fucking love her. Moms are important. Grandmas. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I am. But I think for me, getting this job, and honestly, y'all, getting this job and being in community with y'all, that's where I felt like my second chance, because I felt like I belonged. I felt like I had a purpose. I felt like I could. Part of my accountability is action, and I view my advocacy as being action to the things that not just I've done, but like the things that I know it's like we need to be advocating for to bring about like healing, right, and accountability and things like that. That's not about isolation and punishment, right? So it's really this job and really being with y'all folks and all my other wonderful people that I work with. That's where I think I really felt what I would consider like my second chance.
Thank you everybody for sharing. Then Jennifer looks like the shallow person that was grateful to go see Taylor Swift. No, but I am deeply grateful for my third chance, right? Because when I was incarcerated, when I went back on the inside, there were the women that I'd left there since I was 15. And here I am with another chance. And so this time, I really live that second chance for them. And that's an honor to do that. And I love our community, and it really does help save my life every day. Great question there, Rhonda, which I was going to ask my last real thick question towards the end here. How do y'all keep going and stay positive when dealing with our current legislators? Well, I think that we all use a lot of humor, a lot of patience. We've got a good group chat that it's all day long. We just really lean on each other through the frustrating moments, through the exciting moments. We do a lot of self-care, and we hold each other accountable for self-care. And that being said, I would love to hear, Marcy, we've got about 10 minutes, 12 minutes left. I would love to hear what is y'all's favorite moment at the ledge? But maybe a moment of memory with one of each other, or maybe a victory, or
I'm gonna pop in because I feel like this might be more people might say this, but HB 353, when that went up for hearing, HB 353 is our common sense parole bill. When that went up for hearing, that was my moment. And it had to do with the fact it was a culmination of great organizing, great advocacy, people who been through that up there telling all of those folks, including the TDCJ folks in the back, about not just how things are, but how things should be. And then also marrying that with how just amazing Representative Jarvis Johnson and his staff, particularly Amanda, who are about working not just alongside us, but allowing us to lead in that. Like that is like the culmination of like everything. Every office needs to be that way. Otherwise, I'm not. I don't want to deal with them, right? That's the bar. But that for me, like that was a real moment because of just that whole culmination of just like everything. And if anyone on here had a chance to watch that hearing or was part of that, you can kind of really get a sense what happened during all of that and the other particulars of it. But that was a moment for me for sure.
Come on, Maggie. I know you've got one. Somebody just came off mute. I heard it.
Well, I was just going to say that on that 353, there was 5 pages of public comment. Like it wasn't, it was these 5 folks, and it was Lioness members, and it was Texas SLC members, and it was their outreach, calling on friends and family. And I think that that was so exciting to me to be a part of, because it was just so much bigger than me. And so when people say, and I have been told this week, advocacy with legislation doesn't make an impact, but it absolutely does, because all of those people on the inside, when I'm talking to my friends that are incarcerated and I'm telling them about it gives them hope. Whether or not this bill passes this time, that's a win, that we're still giving hope to the people that are incarcerated right now.
I think working at the state is extremely difficult, especially right now, where we have to fight just to be seen as human. And I wanted to say, staying positive when dealing with these legislators. I'm going to tell you the truth, how I look at this. When I look at these people, I look at them like they're humans. And when they leave, there's so much scandal going on. So, and whether it's true or not, in my head, if I'm up against somebody that may intimidate me, I just make up a story about them. And so it makes it easier, but you can get compassion fatigue. Like, you're fighting so hard and nobody else cares, and you feel like you're running up against a wall. But one of the greatest moments that I think that I've had in advocacy and at the ledge is last session when we went up with 353, which is our common sense parole bill. It didn't get passed, but then I heard Marcy come out and say, we just all of a sudden got our ITP, individual treatment plan. And that was not because we passed a law, but it was because we spent talking about it. And so it may not have been the law, but policy was changed and implemented because of what we do. And so we do have an impact whether the law passes or not. And so that was amazing.
Can I get scandalous?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I just blanked on the medical transport bill. What's the number, Jen?
3739.
37. So a culmination of a lot of what I'm hearing, but Marcy testifying on 3739. The gasps in the gallery behind, the way the legislators snapped to attention. And I'm not sure I can repeat exactly what she said, because maybe I'm just an old repressed white lady, but she grabbed their attention. And y'all, when all that started and the TDCJ person got up there, I started shaking. I was so angry. And so thanks, Marcy, for making them sit up and pay attention.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that was mine. It was done with impact, truth, dignity. It wasn't for shock value. It was just cold truth. That's what it was. And everybody was like, "Good Lord!" So that you took mine, Lori. I think the other one for me would have been during the interim, right? So interim is in between when they hear bills and they're just doing research and study groups, right? And it was about women's programming. And there's 5 of us. There's Cynthia and Lori and me and Maggie and Alexa. Like, we're all there. This group of women walk in, and TDCJ is like, oh boy. And after we testified and just shared what we've experienced, what our current members are experiencing, suddenly, magically, just steady social media from TDCJ almost every other day about women doing this, and look at us doing this program, and and then they reached out to us, we'll come tour the programs. And it was like, that was the moment for me that I really understood our impact as formerly incarcerated women and men. I don't want to, I know I focus a lot on the women, but it's just because we were so beat down. We were so beat down as women by that system. And to see that, girl, we ruffled them feathers pretty hard. That was super impactful to me. And also when we were getting into the elevator one day and Maggie said, "Oh my God, there goes Greg." And he went by into the other elevator and his little Secret Service person jumped out and the door shut in his face. I was like, "You're going to get us arrested. Please stop screaming at the governor when he comes by." But those are many of those moments that we all share up there. A lot of fun and a lot of stress. But okay, we're down to 5 minutes. I'm super impressed with us right now. We stayed on agenda, we stayed on point, and there was nothing too absolutely scandalous here. I love all of y'all very much. Maggie had to pop off and take care of some kiddo stuff, but y'all are my closest friends and your family to me. And you see me through every day. And I know Lori doesn't like fluffy stuff, but I adore each one of you, seriously. And all of our people in our community. I couldn't survive without y'all. So is there any closing words from each one of you?
I just want to for sure thank everybody that has been interacting with us in the chat. Thank you, everyone who has been watching. And we're kind of expanded through several platforms right now. But if you want to contact Texas SLC or Lioness, you can Google us on or look us up on Instagram, look us up on Facebook. We're there. If you have incarcerated loved ones that you want to know about us, make sure and reach out to us because we would love to send them our newsletters. We would love to help them know what's going on in the ledge. And then if you want to get involved yourself, of course, we want you. It takes a whole army. We're fighting an army, so it takes an army, and we're building that army now, and we appreciate you all.
Justin or Lori? Y'all are always the quiet, stoic supporters. Me and Maggie and Marcy. Lord have mercy, we do love to talk. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, everybody, like Marcy said. And thank you, Marcy, for making sure everybody knows how to stay in touch and get involved. And I guess I will, do we do the wave that you taught us?
And Jennifer and Justin might not know this, but my social media contacts who are huge in social media told me when you end a live stream, you're supposed to wave. I need everybody to participate. Justin's rolling his eyes.